is titled Introduction to the Quadratic Formula. And we're going to be answering the question, how else can I solve it? So problem number 96 is titled Quadratic Formula. And one way to solve a quadratic equation is by using the quadratic formula. If you don't have a highlighter, circle it. Super important. This formula uses the values of A, B, and C from a quadratic equation written in standard form, explained in the next paragraph. So go ahead and circle, put stars by this equation right here. This is called the quadratic formula. And then you're going to put a star and write that the song is in Schoology. The song, set to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, is going to help you memorize that all-important formula for the quadratic formula. All right, there's a couple steps you're going to follow. And if you follow these steps and you have a good calculator, you're going to be able to figure out these super quick. All right, when the quadratic equation is written in something called standard form, that is, you have the x squared term first, then the x term, then the constant term, all set equal to 0. Then the a is going to be the coefficient of the x squared, the b is going to be the coefficient of the x, and the c is going to be the constant. These are the steps they want you to follow. For the equation, if x squared minus 3x minus 7 equals 0, then what are the a, the b, and the c? This one is already in standard form, so in front of that x squared, there's a number there that you can't see. What number is there that you can't see? There's a 1 there that you can't see, okay? So our a is 1, our b is the coefficient of the x term. What is it right there? -3. And our c is the constant term. What number is right there? -7. So the a is 1, the b is -3, and the c is -7. You would take those three numbers and plug them in to the correct spot. -3 would get plugged in there and there. 1 would get plugged in there and there. And -7 would get plugged in there. Then you would have all numbers in the equation, and you would simply calculate it with your calculator, or sometimes they're easy and you can do them in your head. All right? So the quadratic formula calculates two possible answers by using the plus-minus symbol. This symbol, read as plus or minus, is shorthand notation that tells you to calculate the formula twice, once with addition and once with subtraction in the numerator. Therefore, every quadratic formula problem is really two problems, unless the value of b squared minus 4ac square rooted is equal to 0. Okay? So since you have the plus-minus symbol, it means once with addition and once with subtraction. Okay? We are going to carefully substitute a, b, and c from the equation we just looked at, the x squared minus 3x minus 7 equals 0, into the quadratic formula. Then we're going to evaluate the expression once using addition and once using subtraction to solve for x. On the left-hand side, you're going to write down the 4 steps. First, you need to make sure that your equation is in standard form. This one already is, so it's already done for us. But if it's not, that's the first thing that you would do. Second, you're going to find what the a is, what the b is, and what the c is. Okay? Third step, you're going to plug in those numbers. The a gets plugged in 2 spots, the b gets plugged in 2 spots, and the c gets plugged in 1 spot. Okay? Then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to simplify it until you have 2 answers, or in some cases, 1 answer, but you're definitely going to need a calculator. So if you don't have your own handheld calculator, you'll use the Desmos Scientific Calculator. All right, here's the equation we're given. It's x squared minus 3x minus 7. We already said that it's definitely in standard form already because it's set equal to 0. We have the x squared term first, the x term second, and the constant third. Okay? Then we're going to find what is a. You guys already told me. A has a 1 in front of it that you can't see. Okay? B has a negative 3 in front of it. And C has a negative 7 in front of it. Okay? Those are all called coefficients. If the term is completely missing, it's not even there, it's 0. But if it's there and there's no number, it's just a 1. Okay? All right, we're going to take these three numbers and we're going to plug them in to the quadratic formula that you see up at the top of the page. It will look like this. We're going to have x equals negative b, but because b is already negative 3, we're going to have negative, which is going to do something, okay? But for now, just write negative. Then we have our plus minus symbol, and then we're going to take the square root of our negative 3. We're going to square that. Make sure you put that negative 3 in parentheses. Minus 4, which is part of our formula. Then we plug in a, which is 1, c, which is negative 7, and then we put it all over 2 times our coefficient of a, which is 1. Okay? The first time you do this step, don't try to simplify. Simply write it with everything plugged in. That way, if you mess up later on, you can come back to this step and make sure you plugged it all in correctly. Okay? It's not that it's hard, it's just that there's several steps. And you want to make sure that you can see it written out completely. Okay? Then you're going to simplify. After you've plugged everything in, okay, then you're going to simplify. All right, so for the next step, we're going to take the opposite of negative 3, which is positive 3. We're going to rewrite the plus minus symbol and the square root. And then underneath that square root, we have negative 3 squared, which is 9. Then we have minus 4 times 1 times negative 7. So you'll take your calculator and you'll multiply 4 times 1 times negative 7, which is negative 28. But because we have minus negative 28, we actually need to say plus 28. Okay? And we're going to simplify the denominator. 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay? But sometimes you'll have a coefficient other than 1, and you'll get a larger number there. Okay? Now we can simplify a little bit more by adding the 9 and the 28 to get 37. And then we're going to calculate this two separate ways. We're going to calculate it once with plus, and then we're going to calculate it again with minus. So let me show you on the calculator how to do it both ways. Can you guys see the calculator? Yes. Okay. So we're going to do 3 plus the square root of 37. Hit the equals. Then we need to divide it by 2. Hit the equals again. And we get this decimal. And it's pretty long, right? They don't want us to write the whole thing. They just want us to write it. I think I did it to 2 decimal places. Let me check. Yep, 2 decimal places. So I rounded the 4.54138125 to 4.54. Okay? And so we need to use the wavy equal sign again because we're rounding. Okay? Now let's do it with the minus. So now for the minus, we're going to do 3 minus the square root of 37. Hit the equal sign, and then we need to divide it by 2. Hit the equal sign again, and this time we get another long decimal, and we're going to round it again to 2 decimal places. I rounded this negative 1 point blah, 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 blah to negative 1.54. Okay? And so but we end up with how many answers? 2 answers, okay? Just like we did yesterday and the day before, all right? Anybody still writing? All right, flip it over to page 21. We're going to do B and D together, and then in your groups of 4, you're going to do A and C together. Okay. So let's start with B. B gives us the equation 2x squared minus 9x minus 35 equals 0. Is it in standard form? Yep, it's in standard form. It's set equal to 0, and each of the terms are decreasing in exponent, right? So we can easily get our A, B, and C. In front of the x squared is a 2. That makes our A2. In front of the x is negative 9. That makes our B negative 9. And the constant term is negative 35. So that's our C. Everybody understand how to get A, B, and C? Yep. Awesome. Okay. Then we're going to take those 3 numbers and we're going to plug them in. A gets plugged in 2 spots, B gets plugged in 2 spots, and C gets plugged in 1 spot. Here's what it looks like plugged in. All you're doing is plugging in. Don't try to simplify yet. Okay? Simply plugging in. X equals negative B. So we're going to say the opposite of negative 9. Then you do your plus minus symbol. Then you have the square root of negative 9 squared. Make sure you put that negative 9 in parentheses. Minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is negative 35. All of it goes over 2 times A, which is 2. Make sure you extend that fraction bar all the way across. Okay? Any questions on plugging it in? Okay? After you go over this formula a couple times in your head, you'll start to memorize it, and you'll just start to sing it and write in the numbers as you do it. It'll get a little bit easier. The first time you do it's a little tricky, but after 3 or 4 times, it gets easy. Okay? Once you've plugged it in, hi. Oh, excuse me. All right, once you completely plugged everything in, then you're going to start to simplify, okay? Here's the first step of simplifying. The opposite of negative 9 is positive 9. Rewrite the plus minus symbol, and then under the radical, you can start simplifying. If you need to use your calculator for that part, that's fine. Negative 9 squared is 81. And then we have minus 4 times 2 times negative 35. Because we have a negative and a negative, it ends up being plus. Okay, but it very well could have been minus. So just watch your signs. And again, if you need to use your calculator, you can. So we end up with 81 plus 280 under the radical. And then in the denominator, 2 times 2 is 4. All right, under that radical, we can add our 81 and 280 to get 361. And then we're going to get our 2 answers. So let me show you how to do it on the calculator. We're going to do the plus first. So you're going to say 9 plus the square root of 361. We're going to divide that by 2. And we get a nice pretty answer of 14. Now let's do the subtracting. So 9 minus the square root of 361. Divide that by, oh, did I divide by 2 or 4? Oh, sorry. That one I divided by 2. I meant to, let's go back. Sorry, do the plus again. 9 plus the square root of 361